All Crucial Hosting split dedicated servers come standard with a cPanel utility called PHP Config. The purpose of this utility is to allow split dedicated hosting clients the ability to change their default server PHP version, as well as modify the parameters of the PHP configuration file known as the php.ini file, as well as enable or disable common PHP extensions such as Xdebug, Redis, and other frequently used PHP extensions. This utility works at the server level. However, you can easily override this server level PHP version using the add handler parameter in an htaccess file for any given directory. Crucial Hosting offers a wide variety of PHP versions for you to use. These currently include the following PHP versions: 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and PHP 5.6. We do not recommend using PHP 5.2 as it has been deprecated by the PHP maintainers and is no longer actively maintained. The last release of PHP 5.2 was January 6, 2011, though this version may be useful for developers for testing backwards compatibility of their PHP scripts. Most modern PHP-based applications will not work using this outdated version. PHP 5.3 is the current server default PHP version. No changes need to be made to use this version. While this version has reached end of life as of August 14, 2014, it is still the most popular version of PHP and compatible with most newer applications. If you are still using this version of PHP, you should prepare your applications for the newer current versions of PHP. PHP is a rapidly developing programming language, and minor version changes are quite frequent. Crucial Hosting has automated the process of making sure that your PHP minor versions are always up to date with the latest minor versions available from the maintainers of PHP. Most minor version changes are completed within 24 hours of their release, less if it is a release to address a security concern. Let's dive in and take a look at the PHP Config Utility. You'll first need to log into your split dedicated server's control panel. Simply search for PHP Config in the search box located at the top of your control panel. Click on the PHP Config icon, and this will direct you to the user interface for configuring PHP for your server. In the top paragraph, you will see your server's current running version of PHP. In our example here, we're running PHP 5.3.16, which is the server's default version at the time of this production. To confirm this, I have created a file containing the PHP info function on our test website. Let's take a look at this file in a web browser to see the server's default PHP configuration. Here we can confirm that we're running PHP version 5.3.16 and view the server's PHP configuration. Let's go back to the control panel and change our running PHP configuration to PHP 5.2. We'll select the 5.2 version of PHP and click the Set Version 5.2.17 as Default button. The page will reload and confirm that the default version of PHP on your server is 5.2.17. We'll go back to the web browser and reload the Crucial Info page to confirm that the changes occurred and that we are now running PHP 5.2.17 and view the running PHP configuration. For the reasons discussed earlier, we don't want to be running PHP 5.2. It's far past its end of life and no longer maintained. Let's update our PHP to a more current version, such as PHP 5.4. We'll go back to the control panel and now select the 5.4 version of PHP and click the Set Version 5.4.39 version as default button. The page will reload and confirm our change in the control panel. Let's verify that change by reloading the crucialinfo.php page. This confirms that the server is now running PHP 5.4.39, and you can view the current running PHP configuration. We could continue on and do this with PHP 5.5 and 5.6, but I think you get the idea. Changing the default version of PHP running on your server is very easy and takes just a few clicks to move from version to version. Now that we're on a current, stable version of PHP, we have some additional options in our control panel that are not available with the end-of-life versions of PHP. We now have actions to take. We can view the PHP info file right from the control panel by clicking on the View PHP Info link, which will display the current running PHP configuration for the selected PHP version. Click Back in the web browser to go back to the PHP config page. We can now change the server's PHP configuration by clicking on the Modify Parameters link. Here's where things start to get interesting. Let's dig in. Click on the Modify Parameters link on the PHP config page, assuming you are on PHP version 5.4 or greater. On this page, you can modify your PHP configuration, otherwise known as your php.ini file. Almost every aspect of the server's configuration can be edited here and instantly applied to your server. We'll take a look at a few common examples. It's important to mention here that almost all of these configuration parameters can be modified and overwritten by an htaccess file in any publicly accessible directory. We'll briefly cover an example of that as well. A common problem that clients encounter is the infamous fatal error, allowed memory size of n bytes exhausted. This simply means that the PHP script has exhausted the configured amount of memory allowed per PHP process. You can now change this PHP memory allocation using the PHP configuration editor. Find the line entry that says memory limit. Its default is set to 256 megs. You can see this under the default setting column. If you have a memory-intensive script, 256 megs may not be enough for the script to complete, and you'll get the fatal error, allowed memory size exhausted error message. Let's go back and reload our crucialinfo.php page and look for the memory limit configuration parameter. The left-hand side is the local value. That is the value that may be set in an htaccess file overriding the master value. The right-hand side is the master value, that is, the server configuration value. If there is no overriding htaccess value, the two values will be the same. Back in the control panel's PHP Config Utility, let's change the master memory limit parameter to 512 megs, but leave the htaccess configured value the same, 256 megs. Now scroll to the bottom of the configuration form and click Save Changes. In almost all cases, you will want to make sure that the Restart Lightspeed Web Server box is checked. The changes you make to this master form will not take effect if the web server is not restarted. Don't worry, the restarting of this web service takes only one moment, and currently connected clients will not notice that the web server has been restarted, thanks to the way Lightspeed Web Server gracefully restarts itself. Once the configuration page reloads, find the memory limit configuration parameter, and you'll see that it now says our master configuration is at 512 megs. We can also see the server default setting of 256 megs, in case you want to change that back to its original value at some point in the future, as well as the exact time that this configuration change was modified. Let's go back and reload our crucialinfo.php page and look for the memory limit configuration parameter. Here we can see that our local value is still set at 256 megs. However, our master value has been modified to 512 megs. The reason our local memory limit value is still 256 megs is that this is what we have configured in the .htaccess file. If we simply comment that line out of the .htaccess file, and now refresh the crucialinfo.php page, we'll see that the values for the memory limit parameter now match at 512 megs. This is the case with almost all PHP configuration variables. Most configuration values can and should be changed in the htaccess file. However, in cases where you want the change to affect the entire server for this particular version of PHP, then you should change it globally and only overwrite it where you must in htaccess files. What if you want to have PHP 5.4 be the server-configured PHP version that most software uses, but you have some legacy PHP code that only works with PHP 5.2? And you also have some shiny new PHP code that only works with 5.6. No problem. This is where we want to implement add handlers using the .htaccess files to specify what version of PHP you want a specific directory to run. On our test site, I have created 5 directories, one for each of the PHP version Crucial Hosting currently supports: PHP 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6. Inside each of these directories, I have created an htaccess file with the appropriate add handler configuration for each PHP version we want to run. Here's a look at the PHP 5.5 directory's htaccess file. Each PHP 5x directory has a similar htaccess file, but with a different add handler to modify which PHP version is to be used in that directory and its subdirectories. Also inside each directory, I've created the crucialinfo.php file, which gives us the PHP version and configuration information. Let's go through each of them in a web browser. PHP 5.2, PHP 5.3, PHP 5.4, PHP 5.5, and PHP 5.6. Let's take a look specifically at the PHP 5.4 directory. Note that there is no .htaccess file. We don't need to add a .htaccess file containing the PHP 5.4 add handler because we have set PHP 5.4 as the server default, which will be used when no overriding PHP add handler is set. You can now easily set your server's default PHP version and use additional PHP versions by overriding the server's default version using the add handler directive in an htaccess file in any given directory. Lastly, let's demonstrate how to quickly and easily enable and disable PHP extensions using the PHP Config Utility. Back in the PHP Config Utility, we have an option to Manage Extensions. We'll click on the Manage Extensions link. At the time of this screencast, you can enable and disable the following PHP extensions: ImageMagick, Memcache, OAuth, Redis, and Xdebug. Xdebug is a popular PHP extension for debugging and profiling PHP scripts and is one of the most requested extensions we receive. With the Extension Manager in the PHP Config Utility, you can quickly and easily enable and disable Xdebug with just the click of a button. Let's go ahead and enable Xdebug by clicking on the Disabled button to toggle this extension's availability. The PHP Config Utility now shows that Xdebug is enabled. We can confirm this by clicking on the View PHP Info button in the PHP Config Utility and searching the page for Xdebug. Here we can see the configuration variables initially set for Xdebug. This can further be confirmed by looking at the crucialinfo.php file in the PHP 5.4 directory we created earlier. Again, just search for Xdebug and you'll see that Xdebug along with its configuration parameters are present. Many Xdebug directives can now be directly configured in your .htaccess file. While this is outside the scope of this screencast, Google can provide you with a wealth of information by searching Configure Xdebug htaccess. To disable Xdebug, as it can slow down your PHP processing, you can simply click the Manage Extensions link in the PHP Config Utility and click the Enabled button to toggle off Xdebug. You can verify Xdebug has been disabled by clicking on the View PHP Info button and searching for Xdebug on the PHP Info page. It's not found. You can manage each of the provided extensions this way on each of the currently supported and maintained PHP versions available, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6. You can now manage not only your server's default PHP version, but also make changes to the server's default PHP configuration and enable and disable common PHP extensions. Our goal in creating this utility was to create the Internet's most developer-friendly hosting environment with automated PHP updates, configuration utilities, and control panel tools to make the demanding life of a PHP developer that much easier. We hope that you find this crucial hosting exclusive and custom PHP Config Utility to make your life easier. This concludes the PHP Config Control Panel Utility tutorial. As always, if you have any questions or require additional assistance, please open a support ticket and we'll be happy to help you.